Good evening, Rabbi. I remember, when I was in Eretz Israel, we had some troubles over there, some issues. There were some battles going on. Not what's going on today. Today it's much worse going on. What's the worst that we've had in a very long time. But even in those days, the rabbis, when it started battles like this, dangerous things, they always told us, we should say Avinu Malkenu, to alleviate this, whatever, to help us. There's a story about this, that the Talmud brought down that one time there was a drought, no rain, in Eretz Israel, talking about in the Second Temple. So what happened was that at that time, this was a generation of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Eliezer was the Gadol Ador, he was the big rabbi of the generation, and Rabbi Akiva really was his Talmid, he learned from Rabbi Eliezer. That's the way it was. So what happened was that at that time already Rabbi Akiva was already a big Chacham also. But he was still, Rabbi Eliezer was the Gadol Ador, whatever. So what happened was that they had a drought. So the rabbis, decided to sit, and do something about it, whatever. So what happened was that Rabbi Eliezer prayed for rain, so they shouldn't have a drought. And he wasn't answered. They didn't answer him.
No way.
Right. So what happened was that once that ended, that they saw they didn't answer him, comes Rabbi Akiva, and starts to say Avinu Malkenu, like we did now. Right? And he was answered. The rain came when he said Avinu Malkenu. The rain came. So we see from there, right, that's a strong tefillah. This Avinu Malkenu is something very effective. But the truth is, that they asked a question over there, right? Because what happened was that when Rabbi Eliezer asked for rain and he didn't get, and Rabbi Akiva got, so they're like, the Talmud is bigger than the rabbi? Is that the way it is? Why did they answer Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer? They didn't answer him. This was the question. So what happened was that they say a bat kol came out, some voice from heaven came out and said, the reason why Akiva was answered and not Eliezer is not because Akiva is bigger in Torah than Eliezer. Eliezer, nobody's bigger than him. That's not the issue. But they said because Rabbi Akiva is more forgiving. So what does that mean, forgiving? Sometimes, when you go to a rabbi, a big chacham, and you anger him, start to play games with him, so he's going to get angry at you, you know what I mean? So sometimes he won't forgive you. You have to apologize, you have to, whatever. But Rabbi Akiva, it seems like, he was more forgiving. He was, more like, he felt more humble. He didn't come from, even a Jewish family, right? His father was a ger, Rabbi Akiva. Akiva ben Yosef, right? His father Yosef was a ger. He was a convert, so he didn't feel, such a big, stature by himself. He was a humble person. So what happened was that he was more forgiving to people, that somebody would offend him or something, he would forgive them more.
That's because his teacher was Rabbi Hillel?
I'm sorry?
Was it because his teacher was Rabbi Hillel?
Well, first of all, we don't call him Rabbi Hillel, we call him Hillel.
Okay.
Right? Those rabbis in that generation, they weren't called Rabbi. You know what I mean? So the truth is that Rabbi Akiva was in a different generation than Hillel, not in the same generation.
The story says he came to him.
For what? For
to start learning, and he accepted into his school.
I don't know. Yeah, that maybe when he was younger. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I don't know where you get that from, but if you know the source, you can show me. I'm not really sure where that's written, but it's a little bit different. You know why? Because in those times, right, these were two different generations. Shammai and Hillel, they were not called rabbi. They were just called Shammai and Hillel. So you know why that is? So Talmud says, right, that if you call him by his name, not rabbi, not rabbi, he's even bigger. The ones who didn't have the name rabbi, they were bigger than the ones that they were called rabbi. I'm sorry? Okay. The truth is, you may think like that, but it's not true. For sure, they had smicha, Hillel and Shammai. There's no question about that. That ordination That's not the issue, but like to explain to you a little bit, like for instance, Moshe Rabbeinu, right? We call him Rabbi Moshe. Nobody calls him Rabbi Moshe. We call him Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Moshe, Yoshua. Anybody calls him Rabbi Yoshua? Nobody, right? What about David HaMelech? They call him Rabbi David? No, why? Because in those days they didn't use Rabbi, and they didn't use those names. And the Talmud says the ones that didn't use them were bigger than the ones that used them. You know what I mean? So that's the way it is. So once the generation starts to go down, then they start to use the Rabbi, this title, But before they weren't really using it so much. It was just his name, That's it, right? No surnames, no nothing. So anyway, right? As we said, that being forgiving is a very good thing, So the truth is, that that's why when we come into Yom Kippur, the Chazan or the Rabbi calls out, we should all forgive each other, because sometimes what happens is that if you don't forgive your fellow man, there's going to be like kfeda, there's going to be like some kind of a bad feelings between you and him. So this also causes sometimes all kinds of decrees, all kinds of things, So Rabbi Akiva was forgiving, and this is the reason why his prayer was answered. But anyway, right, we see from there that the prayer of Avinu Malkenu is a strong prayer, It works very well, because that's what works to bring the rain from the drought. So therefore, in times of trouble also, when there's wars and things going on, the rabbis usually start telling us to say Avinu Malkenu. This is the reason why we're doing it. But, there's also, what we do is we also say some Pirkei Tehillim, But here's the thing, right, that you have to be careful. The truth is, when you say Pirkei Tehillim, you shouldn't say it before the vidui and tachanun, because it's like interruption there. You should do that after Aleinu L'Shabeach, if you want to say Tehillim, but not really over there. Over there you can say Avinu Malkenu, because that's the place where you say it. That's what the rabbis put it. But when it comes to the Tehillim, what you should do is to say it after Aleinu L'Shabeach or whatever, not over there, because there's a rule like this, that between the Amidah and the Tachanun, you're not allowed to talk over there. You're not allowed to say nothing. So that's why we shouldn't really do it over there. But now we're not doing Tachanun. We're not doing Vidui until after Rosh Chodesh, right? So we'll be okay for now. For this week, right? Next week we'll be okay. But then we have to, once that's over, we have to get back, right, and start doing it the proper way, which is what? Say Avinu Malkenu, then say Vidui, then say Tachanun. And then when you finish, you can say some Tehillim if you want, in the end. This is the proper way to do it. Okay, very good. That's one thing. Yeah.
Is there a fast day?
There are some people who are fasting, but the truth is that there's no obligation to do these things.
I heard the Rabbanim were put a fast day.
Yeah, well, there are these Rabbanim and those Rabbanim, some say yes, some say no. There's no obligation. If your rabbi tells you to fast, you should fast, but not some rabbi, who got in his head now to fast all of a sudden. I want to explain to you a little bit about that, by the way, about fasting, that today, the Poskim say, the Chazal, they say the word, the rabbis, that it's a weak generation, we're weak. So we don't fast very well, and so what happens is that when a person fasts, he loses his energy, cannot study properly, cannot work properly if he's working, whatever he's doing, right? All the things that he wants to do. He can't really do it so properly because he has no energy. So therefore, the rabbis tell us, encourage us in this generation, you should only fast when you really have to, it's an obligation. Because otherwise, you're going to be learning less Torah and doing less work. Let's say if you have a boss, right? And your boss expects you to do a certain job. And you're fasting and saying, oh yeah, I'm very holy. Yeah, you're very holy, but you can't do the job because, you're fasting. Your boss wants you to work. He doesn't want you to sit there, and afflict yourself. That's not what he's paying you for. And also the boss up there also, same thing, He's not paying you to fast, he's paying you to learn Torah. That's what you should do. So, the tikkun that we have in our generation, the best thing, a lot of people do all kinds of things, right? They do fasting, they do tanit dibur, right? Don't talk all day, whatever. Man, he never did any of these things. He didn't. Why? Because he was too busy learning Torah, Too busy. Sorry, I'm learning. I don't have time for these things. You know what I mean? Talmud Torah keneged kulam. So what does that mean? It's weighed against all the mitzvot. The Avinu says, like, one letter of Torah is more important than all the mitzvot combined. One word of Torah more important. So Talmud Torah keneged kulam. That's what it means. It means that it's weighed against all the mitzvot. So fasting, it's not really, because I'll tell you something. You'll have to fast maybe for a few months, because it's going to continue. It's not going to. You know what I mean? So what are you going to do? Fast every day for 6 months? What are you going to do? How's that going to help you? Are you just going to, just going to make yourself weak? God knows. Hashem should help, right? But it's not really. Whatever, there are some Hasidim. I'll tell you this, by the way, interesting story. That when I was in Eretz Israel, when I was in Yerushalayim, living there, I was zochet to meet, the son-in-law of Baba Sali. His name is Rabbi Busu. I think he's still alive. Hashem should give him a long life. Anyway, right, so what happened was that he was a shamash of Baba Sali also. He was shamash. So he told us a story about this, I'll tell you. What was the minhag of Baba Sali? This is something very, very unusual. It's true, I'm not telling you some exaggeration. Baba Sali only ate on Shabbat. The rest of the week he was fasting. Can you imagine such a thing like this? No kidding. There are people who still do it today, by the way, the same thing. There are very few people, but Baba Sali did not eat all week. Nothing. Only on Shabbat he ate. They say, right, that he must have been very strong, because you got to be very strong to do something like that. He must have been a very strong man, even when he was older. But the interesting thing is, that what do you call it? The Rabbi Busu told us, on Friday, right, Erev Shabbat, he wanted to go to the mikveh, right, Baba Sali, So he says he was so weak from fasting. He says on Friday, on Yom Shishi, we had to put him into the mikveh. He wasn't able to go himself into the mikveh. He had no energy to go in. But most of us are not on this level. You know what I mean? So therefore, we really shouldn't get into this stuff. When you get to that level that you can do things like this, this is very very unusual stuff. So that's the thing, right? So therefore, right, the proper thing to do. You don't really have to fast. Some rabbis say you have to fast. You don't need to listen to them. There's no unless it's Gedolei Ador, they say, the big rabbis of the generation, they say to fast. That's something else. Then we can fast, if you have to. But another thing I want to tell you is like this, very important. God bless you. That today the big tikkun, as I said, is not fasting because we're too weak for that, and not tanit dibur because you talk like, people ask you questions, you can't even answer them, You look like a little bit crazy, whatever. That's not the best tikkun. The best tikkun is to learn Torah. Talmud Torah keneged kulam. If you want to really elevate your soul and do teshuvah and cleanse yourself, the best way to do it is Talmud Torah. And this is our tikkun in our generation, not the fasts, not the tanit dibur and all these other things. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ואמן, חזק וברוך. רבי חנניה בן גשי אומר, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות ישראל.